one for us as sports guys. We have, some would say, the voice of New York sports, one of the co-hosts of WFAN's Afternoon Drive, Evan Roberts. So, Evan, hope you're doing well, and thanks for spending some time with us tonight.
How's it going?
There we go.
Pleasure to be here, even though you don't know what you're doing. I'm still honored to be here.
We're working through it. We're not professionals, but we're working through it.
You think I'm a professional? I know nothing about Zoom. This is all new to me.
All right. Well, maybe we'll teach you some things tonight.
Teach me.
So, Evan, obviously you're the co-host of WFAN, but a lot probably led up to that point. So for those on the call that aren't familiar with your background, kind of just walk us through the journey of getting to where you are today.
Well, one thing Ryan will not admit, he won't talk about, is that when I was in high school, I was a world-class baseball player. I mean, they said my glove was like Keith Hernandez and my bat was like, all right, it really was not the case. I was god-awful, but I always loved sports. I always loved sports talk. I always wanted to be on WFAN, even as a kid. I remember listening all the time and knowing that was one of my dreams. My other dream was to do play-by-play for Major League Baseball, but that kind of went away. So I worked in radio. I worked at XM Satellite Radio when they first launched, when they didn't have any subscribers before they merged with Sirius. And all the while, when I worked there, when I worked in Baltimore at a different sports station, I would always send my tape to WFAN because I knew that was the place I wanted to end up going. And so I worked in Washington, D.C. for XM Radio. I worked at an ESPN affiliate in Baltimore, which was a great learning experience because I followed NASCAR races. And so I actually had to learn about NASCAR and act like I was passionate about NASCAR, which was something else. And I got a chance to fill in at WFAN for the first time in 2004. And I just kept doing shows, worked in the overnight. And eventually in 2007, I got full-time and I started partnering up with Joe. But FAN was always the place I knew I wanted to end up. And it was persistence because the first time I sent my tape there, it wasn't like they said that was great. It was like, keep working on things. So I always knew that's where I wanted to go and end up. And I think it was like every 6 months I would send a tape. And eventually I was given an opportunity, thankfully.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great, to hear, because a lot of these guys on the call are probably, working through their own life paths or wherever they're going to be. I mean, obviously they're with us for baseball, but most likely their careers are going to take another path. So I think, you didn't just graduate and go right to WFAN. You had to work your way up through struggles. And I know you said you worked for XM, but you weren't, I know, but these guys, it wasn't even a sports show. So you worked on other things even before sports. So just, finding your craft and your profession, which I think, I think that's important for these guys to know that you're not just going to.
Should I tell them about the segment that
right away? No, we could leave that one out.
No, it's a lot like baseball. Leave what out? What did you think I was going to say?
I don't know where you were going with it, but.
What did you think I was going to say?
No, I don't know.
All right, I'm not going to say anything, but no, I'm afraid now. I'm not going to say anything. In baseball, when you fail, what is it? The old adage is you fail 70% of the time and you go to the Hall of Fame, right? You fail 70% of the time, you're a 300 hitter. When I was sending tapes out, because I worked at XM for a few years, and then they laid off like 30% of their employees, and I was one of them. And so now I was looking for another radio job. And at that time, you're right, I wasn't doing all sports. It was mostly, it was kind of everything. But I knew, I wanted to target sports. And I sent a tape everywhere in America, not just WFAN. And my success rate was incredibly low. And it is a reminder in any walk of life, whether it's radio or it's baseball, obviously, man, there is so much freaking failure, but you just got to kind of grind through it and never take no for an answer, even if 9 out of 10 radio stations say they don't want to hire you. You just keep going. And that, I'll tell you, that was probably the biggest life lesson I had from between when I worked at XM and I think it was before I got into Baltimore, where I sent tapes to like every freaking sports station in America, and the success rate was incredibly low. So it works in every walk of life. You got to keep battling. If you know what you want to do, you fight till the very end to get there.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice. So now you get the call. You're doing the overnights of the fan. You find out that you're going to partner with Joe on the afternoon spot. You had many years of experience to that point, but going to a prime time slot on WFAN, which you mentioned was your dream, you know, radio station. Any nerves? How was that transition to now going to where you might have been more overnight by yourself to now working with Joe, two-man squad?
I was insanely nervous, but it was more about working with Joe because I listen to Joe. You know, I grew up in the overnight after a Jet loss or a Met loss. The Knicks I would more laugh about, but certainly with the Jets and the Mets, I listened to Joe. So it was very nerve-wracking. Like, I can't believe I'm working with this guy. I hope he likes me. And he made it a lot easier because the first time I ever did a show with him, and it was before we were full-time, it was probably maybe 5 months earlier we did a fill-in together. He made me feel very, very comfortable. So that kind of eased my nerves. But working with him full-time, I think that's where more of my nerves was than the show not sounding good or not knowing what to say. It was, I got this partner, and I got this partner that I loved. I mean, I listened to him, and it was, boy, I hope we have a great relationship, and I hope it works. And, you know, we clicked very well. So it started to fit very quickly. And, you know, as time goes on now, I mean, I've been doing shows with him for 13 years now. I think we can almost finish each other's sentences. So we're like a married couple without the, you know.
Yeah, I got you. Now, obviously, you just mentioned you're a big fan of Joe. Working with him every day, do you have a greater appreciation for him than maybe you did just as a listener and a fan that didn't see behind the scenes every day with him?
Yeah, I think when I listened to him, I was like, boy, he remembers a lot. But now when I work with him, something just fell. I apologize. But working with him, now I see, because, you know, I'm doing the show with him. I listen to everything he says. We're on the air for 4 hours a day. I am so mesmerized by his memory. People say I have a good memory, and I'm like, wait a second. Do I have a good memory? Give me a break. He's got an A+ memory. So I think that's one of the things that always jumped out at me. Man, it's amazing how he remembers every little thing from the 60s, from the 70s, from the 80s. Because when you're listening, you hear bits and pieces of it, but when you're there with him, you see how it's truly incredible. And the passion for the Jets, which you always knew through the radio, but then sitting with him during Jet playoff games, on the road for Jet playoff games, it's a completely different animal. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, Joe's one of a kind as a listener. Definitely a great one to listen to. And you guys together, obviously, have been very successful. The many years you guys had your show, I think you said 13 years you've kind of been working together. Obviously, a couple years ago, the great Mike Francesa decides to retire, unretire, and then retire again, but we'll just take it as a whole. Now you just talked about kind of going to the midday show. Any nerves filling in for Mike, you and Joe going to fill the 1 to 6 time slot?
It was more exciting. I think that if we did it when he first retired, it would have probably felt even more nerve-wracking. Like, oh my God, we're replacing the holy land of Mike and the Mad Dog and Mike. I think it was made a little bit easier because he left. There was another show there, then he came back. But I think because we've done that show for a while, filling in, it made the transition a little bit easier. And to be honest with you, I think what's made it weirder, but also easy, is our world has changed. So here we are filling these big shoes of afternoon drive, a lot of pressure, and we only did it for 3 months, and now we're at home doing it without sports. It's just, it almost doesn't even feel real anymore. The last 3 months have been so strange. So I think in a way that's affected, you know, making that transition from middays to afternoons. But I think for us, we just do the same show. You know, we've had success in middays. Hopefully it'll lead to the same in afternoons. But we end up doing a very, you know, similar show. Just we're on a little bit later in the day, and I get to sleep a lot later.
Yeah. Last question about your show. Is it more difficult to get on the 3 extra hours or filling it? I mean, I know you guys get better guests now probably because of the time slot you're on. But how hard is it adjusting to a 3-hour show to a 6-hour show as far as filling time?
Well, the show length-wise, like we did 3 hours, 10 to 1. Now we do 2 to 6. So it's like an extra hour. But we were doing 4 hours for a little bit of time. So I don't really think that makes much of a difference. The one thing I've thought about show-wise that's a little bit different, and we're not experiencing it right now because there's no games, is you're on at 10 a.m., you're reacting to the day before. You're on at 2 o'clock, you're reacting a little bit to the day before, but it's also the afternoon. Like, you're almost leading into the next night. You're almost like, if there's a Yankee or a Met playoff game, you're reacting to the night before, but you're also setting everybody up for the night that's about to come. So we haven't had that much experience with it yet because, again, we were on January, February, and then March, the sports world stops. We haven't had any baseball yet. But that was one of the things I was always thinking about, like, once the baseball season starts, to kind of not be a fully reactionary show and a little bit of reaction, but also getting you set for the night. Because by the time we're off the air at 6 o'clock, everybody's excited for the game that night. So hopefully soon we'll get to experience that.
Yeah, you're a mix, like you said, of a recap show to a pre-show in a sense. All right, so now let's get into kind of the sports part of this. And, you're a sports junkie like myself and probably most of us on the call. What do you find yourself doing right now with no live sports, but other than, some Korean baseball?
I would say the last 2 months have been a mix of watching more shows with my wife, which is good, and spending more time with her, and watching, we like to binge TV shows. So right now we're binging How I Met Your Mother. So more of that. But from a sports perspective, the classic games. I've watched so much of it over the last 2 months, and not really the ones that they're showing on TV, but going on YouTube and just ending up at a different planet where all of a sudden I'm watching a Met game from 1992 or a Yankee World Series game from 1996. But, it's been 2+ months. It's starting to get old. Like right now here in late May, at first I was, hey, this is kind of exciting. Hey, I would have never had an opportunity to watch this much classic stuff. This is a good opportunity. But I tell you, 2 months in now, it is starting to get old. So, I'd say my nights have been filled with a mix of that, but then a mix of being able to spend more time with my wife. Because in April is a crazy month. If my basketball team actually is in the playoffs, I'm locked into every game. If my hockey team's in the playoffs, I'm locked into every game. And then you got the Mets and the Yankees. So April can sometimes be this insane month in which I'm in a room watching sports all day. And we've gone from that extreme to I'm finding a random 1990s Mets game to watch. So that's how I have filled my time.
Yeah, I mean, have you found yourself learning stuff about or seeing players that play for teams that you don't remember? Are you learning now, being older and maybe more educated on the sports as a business as a whole, looking back?
I mean, like, one thing I was interested in was games that I vaguely remember watching. So the Giants-Buffalo Bills Super Bowl is a game in which, I was 6 years old. I kind of remember it. I kind of remember how I felt, but I wasn't watching it with the knowledge that I have now. So going back and watching a game like that was really cool because I'm putting together what I vaguely remember as a child to what I saw. Same thing with, I think it was the 91 World Series, the Twin Brave World Series. I kind of remember waiting up late at night and seeing Kirby Puckett hit a home run in Game 6. And obviously you know all about it, but watching every pitch, I always say this, because Joe said to me recently, if you're going to watch Game 6 of the 86 NLCS, just start it in the 9th inning. I said, no, I want to watch the whole freaking thing. I need the whole experience of everything that happened in that game. And so I have found that I've learned a lot more that isn't necessarily talked about as much in history, because certain things are like kind of the lead thing that you remember, and then they're underrated parts of the game. So that's been kind of the cool part of watching a lot of these old games. So yeah, you learn a lot of things that you just either forgot or didn't even realize happened.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that. What do you think is going to be the first pro sport to return?
Basketball.
U.S. pro sport, I should say.
I am now.
Basketball. Why?
You mean the majors, NBA and NBA, NHL, MLB? Is that the question?
Yeah, the major first.
NBA.
The major four. What's going to be the first one to return? NBA. How come?
I think it's going to be the NBA because I think that, first of all, I think Adam Silver is the best commissioner in sports. I think he's got his players, his owners, they're all on the same page. I think the NHL will be close too. I just think the NHL is a little bit more complicated. Got more guys on a roster. They have more teams that they're probably bringing back based on the playoff situation that they're putting together. If I had to guess right now, baseball, I'm losing faith in. I think there'll be a baseball season. I try to remain confident, but right now I have more faith that the NBA will start, that it'll definitely happen. And I think that's the first of the major sports we're all watching, if I had to predict.
Where do you think they'll? I mean, I think there's been floating around a couple different locations. Any preference where they would go, or any idea where you think would be the best spot for them to return? I think I heard Vegas, Orlando, or the Bahamas as the main three.
Yeah, it looks like Disney World and Vegas are going to be the two locations. I mean, I think for us as viewers, as fans, it doesn't matter. You know, whatever is obviously the safest, whatever they can pull off from players and family members staying there. Look, we're all going to watch on TV. Does it really matter if it's on a basketball court in Orlando, Florida, or the Bahamas? Now, I never visioned that my celebration as my first championship I get to witness as a fan is going to happen at freaking Disney World with nobody there. I never visioned that to be that way. And I'm probably not going to have to worry about it because I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. But I think that probably Disney World in Vegas seems like the likeliest spot. The truth is it doesn't really matter for us. As long as it's done safely, just they can play anywhere. They play in my backyard.
And that has to be, I would think, a big push from the business side of sports is there's probably no greater time. If you could safely open, ratings are going to skyrocket. They're going to go through the roof just for the fact that nobody has anything to watch.
Yeah, I agree with you. The one thing I question, though, is if the NBA, the NHL, and Major League Baseball are playing at the same time, there'll be competition. So then it's going to be, which games are more compelling, but also which game is better on TV without fans. You know, one thing I'm not sure about with the NBA, and I'll be into the NBA no matter what, but what is a basketball game going to look like on television without crowds? And I don't know. And I think for casual fans, that's going to make a big difference. If it comes across awkward and weird, there's maybe a lot of casual fans that say, yeah, I don't want to watch it. Pro wrestling, and I know you still watch it a little bit, their ratings are way down. And I think they're way down because people just don't like the product without a crowd there. Is that going to happen to the NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball? I hope not. I think the NBA, though, is the sport I wonder about. I think baseball without a crowd isn't going to be a big deal. So we'll see if they're all competing with each other where the audiences go.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. So let's go into, obviously, we're a baseball academy, so let's shift our focus mainly to MLB and baseball. If you were you were the commissioner of MLB baseball right now, what would your proposal be, or what's your idea to get baseball started in this shortened season?
The first thing I would do is I got to make sure everything's done from a health perspective. It can be done. So I'm going to talk to the experts and say, is it dangerous to play in November? Can I take my regular season deep into November? Because I want to maximize the regular season. 82 games. Look, if that's what we get, we'll all accept it. I'd love 110 games. And I'm not opposed to saying, let's have the season end in December, or maybe December is too much, but late November as opposed to early November. If health officials are telling me, look, there's too much of a risk, there's going to be a second wave, obviously you got to put the safety first. But I would really try to maximize the amount of regular season games I could play. I really like the idea that they have of saying, look, you're going to play your division and you're going to play interleague of the same division to cut down travel. I don't have an issue with that. You're keeping the divisions the same. You know, the Mets and the Yankees aren't competing for a division. They happen to play each other 6 times, maybe 9 times. So I like a lot of what they're proposing. What I wouldn't do is try to screw around with the rules just because I have a chance to. Like, I'm not putting a guy on second base in the 11th inning because, well, it's a weird year. I may as well. No, I wouldn't do a lot of that. So, I mean, I think the money perspective is the biggest issue. And what I would tell the players, because I think that's the biggest thing that's going to keep them from playing, is I'd say, look, we're going to pay you what we agreed to. But next year, we're not going to be able to pay big salaries. I mean, Mookie Betts can't complain that he's only getting $90 million instead of $300 million. We're not going to be able to pay him because, A, we're giving you half of the salaries based on a prorated schedule, and B, we don't have any crowds. So we're not bringing in money. So I would try to explain to the players, look, you want every dime that we agreed to, we'll give it to you, but what do you think is going to happen next year? And don't be crying that there's some kind of collusion. It's not collusion. We don't have the money. So that's probably what I would do, but, we'll see how it ends up.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of give and take this year that's going to trickle down over the, in effect of upcoming years. And like you said, player salaries by the most important one on both sides is going to impact. Obviously, it's going to be some sort of a shortened season this year. Focusing right now on the two New York teams, a shortened season benefits which one more than the other?
Who does it benefit? I don't know if a shortened season is the thing that's going to benefit either the Mets or Yankees or hurt them. I think the roster construction and the way the games are going to be played is where I can see a benefit. So, for example, where I think it's going to hurt the Mets is I think bullpens are going to be so heavily relied on. I mean, Jacob deGrom is going how many innings deep into a start? Is he really? There's going to be a 2-week spring training. And then even when you get a month into the season, aren't you going to be nervous about injuring Jacob deGrom? Aren't you going to be nervous about I'm pushing Jake too far? So I think what we're going to end up seeing is teams really relying on their bullpen. So as we sit here today, what do we think of the Met bullpen? Well, it should be better than it was last year, but it ain't going to be their strength. So I don't necessarily look at 82 games as, hey, this is going to help the Yankees or help the Mets or hurt the Yankees or help the Mets. I think it's more, what's the season going to be played like? And look, I think the DH helps the Mets. The DH doesn't make any difference on the Yankees. I think the Yankees will benefit from having a deep 40-man roster. So I think in their competition for the American League East, the Yankees not only had the best 25, 26-man roster, they got a good 40-man roster. And I think that's going to benefit them. I think the reliance on bullpen, which I believe is going to be the case. Remember, the Mets don't have Noah Syndergaard. Let's not forget that, in case you did. I think it could hurt the Mets, but they will definitely benefit from the fact that there's going to be a DH. And so whether it's Yoenis or it's Dom Smith or it's Robbie Cano not having to play second base every day, no question that rule for 1 year is going to help the Mets. But I think it's going to be more about 40-man rosters and bullpens to determine who does this benefit or hurt over an 82-game season.
You touched on it. I know you hate the subject, but is this the straw that's going to break the camel's back on getting the universal DH in all of baseball?
Probably. I mean, I'm a beaten man, bro. I don't hate the DH. I make that very clear. I grew up with the DH in the American League. It's totally fine with me. I just don't like it in the National League. I like the differences between the leagues. I am fully prepared for the fact that I will never see a pitcher hit again. Like I'm actually bracing that once they open up that can this year, 2021, I'm not going to see Jacob deGrom hit. So it sucks. I'll continue to speak out against it, but I'm also a realist. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm for the difference in the leagues, but I'm with you. I think that it's going to come here this season if there is a season, and it's not going anywhere. So I mean, you touch on Yankees shortened season. Is it World Series a bust still for them, or just give them a pass with the unprecedented times?
It's a great question, man, because I think that everybody's going to look at that differently. I would say I give them – I don't want to say I give them a pass, but it's a different kind of season. They're going to be in the playoffs. There's going to be more playoff teams. So it's not as if there's this worry that will break. That's why the 82-game thing to me is, how does an 82-game affect you? The good teams are going to make the playoffs. You have to just be halfway decent. You're going to make the playoffs. It's all about those rounds. If you're adding another round to the playoffs, there's a greater chance there's an upset. This is freaking baseball. I mean, what are we talking about here? The best teams don't always win. Newsflash, the Washington Nationals were not the best team in baseball last year. They were the best team at the right time, just like the Mets were in 2015. Like, I'm not denying that. Were the Mets the best team in the National League in 2015? They weren't. They were hot for a month. That's great. It almost got them a world championship. So it definitely makes the postseason much more of just anything can happen. So I think if you're being realistic about it, yeah, there is a better chance the Yankees were going to win the World Series with a normal season than this season, simply because of math. There's an extra layer of the playoffs. But the Yankees are the Yankees. And so if they lose in the postseason, they're going to be losing to a team that we all say the Yankees are better than. No matter who they play, whether it's Tampa Bay, whether it's Houston, it doesn't matter. The Yankees are better on paper. So, of course, it'll be a disappointment because the Yankees would have lost to a team that they should have beaten.
Yeah, especially, I mean, we don't know how the regular season is going to be. We don't know what the format of the postseason is going to be. Is it going to be best of 3, best of 5, or the traditional best of 7? I think that'll factor in also. So now flipping over to the Mets, what should we expect from the Mets? We kind of didn't know what to expect on a full season, what to expect on a shortened season.
I mean, I will be very disappointed / pissed off / angry if they don't make the playoffs. Because I'm under the impression, the way we all are, they are adding 2 extra playoff teams. So last year they would have made the playoffs. Okay, so what do I expect? I think that I expect them to be good. I expect them to be decent. What the concern I'd have is the division. They're in a very good division. The Yankees are in a division where I think we all agree the Orioles are bad. The Red Sox are probably going to be bad. The Blue Jays are a young, upcoming team, but how good are they really? And Tampa's solid. The Mets are in a division in which the Phillies have huge expectations, the Braves have huge expectations, and the freaking Nationals are the defending world champions. I know the Marlins. So it's a tough division. I'd be very curious. Keep an eye on this. How are they picking the 7 playoff teams? Is it 2 in each division and then a wild card team? Because remember, the Mets are not playing based on what we think. They're not playing the Cubs. They're not playing the Brewers. They're not playing the Pirates. They're playing all those good teams in the NL East, the Marlins, and the American League East. So if it's going to be tough or tougher to make the playoffs based on that format. But with all that said, they better freaking make the playoffs. I think their starting pitching depth, which I always had a big issue with, it's going to be tested. We already know Syndergaard isn't there, and I think they're going to need more than 5 starters with this kind of season that we're looking at. I don't think they're going to ask Jacob deGrom to pitch every 5 days and go deep in a game. So I think the starting pitching depth, which was a question to begin with, is now being impacted by 2 things: Syndergaard and the nature of this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only positive that might come out of the shortened season is Cespedes might actually be there on opening day. I know that's a big if, but he was already doing activities in the normal spring training. You only could hope or think these extra months could only benefit the chances of him being there. But the downside of that is, well, the flip side from the Mets perspective is they're probably going to have to pay him the full amount of money that they owe him, because he might actually get the at-bats or the percentage of games that whatever the agreement they worked out.
Yeah, but I wonder how much money that turns into, considering there's only 82 games. I mean, how many at-bats, plate appearances can he actually get in such a shortened season? And he's not going to play every single day. So, look,
if there's a DH, he might, though.
But Cespedes better be ready for the start of the season. It's going to happen in July. Like, we were sitting there in March thinking, oh, will he be ready for opening day? You told me he's not going to be ready for July 4th? He better be ready for July 4th. Yeah.
Hope so. Okay, so now take MLB as a whole, 2020 season, shortened season, your World Series prediction. What do you have on today? As you stand today, obviously stuff could change, but as you sit here today, what's your gut telling you is going to be whatever World Series we might get?
The Astros.
The Astros. But it's still going to be good, man. They're still going to be good. I don't care what's going on. They're still going to be good.
And think about it. No, they're still going to be good. But think about the 2 things that are going to happen right now. Justin Verlander wasn't going to be ready for opening day. Didn't he have a groin issue? So, Justin Verlander is going to be ready to go. Number 2, there's no crowd. There may not even be that much media that they have to deal with. So, the Astros aren't dealing with any angry crowds, and they're not going to deal with those questions every day, which I thought, if you're human, was going to get to them. Going in every ballpark, being public enemy number 1. So, those 2 things aren't going to happen. And guess what? One of these rules that our great commissioner came up with was no fighting. Strictly prohibited. So I don't even know if we're going to get teams going after the Astros. And to your point, and this is the most important, they're a very talented team. They're still a very good team, despite losing Garrett Cole, which is a huge loss, no doubt. George Springer's in a contract year. I think that, look, it'd be easy just for me to tell you, okay, here are the 2 best teams on paper. It's the New York Yankees. It's the LA Dodgers. There's going to be 7 playoff teams. It's going to be an 82-game season. I would almost fully expect that something freaking crazy is going to happen. So I'm going to tell you right now, if I had to make a prediction, we're going to have an Astro-Red World Series. You like that one? That good?
The Reds are, an underrated team, I think. So that kind of brings me to, and they might be your answer since you just put them in the World Series. We have a question from in the chat. Who's your sleeper team this year in MLB?
Well, I don't know if the Reds are a sleeper team anymore. I had them as my sleeper team last year. Yeah, no, exactly. And I think a lot of people expect stuff from them. So I don't think the Reds even qualify. The team that I thought, if we're really going sleeper, a team that most people don't think would be that good, is I actually do like the Toronto Blue Jays to be better than people think. They have a tremendous young lineup. of position who all tend to be related or sons of former major leaguers. But they have so much talent on offense. And what I loved about what they did during the offseason is they went out and added some veteran pitching. They went out and added Hyun-Jin Ryu. They went out and added Chase Anderson. They went out and added Tanner Roark. Not saying these guys are Cy Youngs or anything, even though Ryu had a great year last year. So I could see them being sneaky good. And I am trying to think, like, okay, in an 82-game season, who does it benefit? Maybe it does benefit a young, talented team like a Toronto Blue Jay team. So I do like the Cincinnati Reds. I don't know if they even qualify as a sleeper anymore. So I'd say the Blue Jays have a chance to be real good. Maybe they sneak in as the 6th or 7th playoff team.
Yeah, I mean, Blue Jays, like you said, this shortened season, young guys come hot out of the gate. They get that confidence and that belief that, hey, we belong and we can put this thing together. They don't have to sustain it. How many times you see a team get hot and by the All-Star break, now they're starting to fizzle a little bit
True.
at the All-Star break. You get hot out of the gate, you get that confidence and you ride that wave, but you blink your eye, you're in the second round of the playoffs. And when normally you'd be at the All-Star break. All right, so we're going to kind of transition here to some quick rapid-fire questions. First thing that comes to your mind, spit it out. Favorite sport?
Baseball.
Baseball, all right. Favorite athlete? Could be any sport.
Right now? Jacob
Current,
DeGrom.
and now I want the past of all time. You can pick from anyone.
It actually was Jason Williams, and then he killed somebody, and so I had to kind of reevaluate my favorite athletes. But it was Jason Williams for a while of the New Jersey Nets.
All right. Best guest you ever interviewed?
Jeff Kent. It's recency bias, but he was freaking awesome last month. Jeff Kent.
Hall of Famer Jeff Kent, or should be Hall of Famer Jeff Kent, in my opinion. Guest you haven't interviewed that you hope to one day?
But where do I start? I mean, Chipper Jones, Albert Bell, Tom Brady, Barry Bonds.
That's a good
Barry
list.
Bonds. If I have to give one person, the answer is Barry Bonds.
Yeah, what, is that because you have a bone to pick with him, or are you going to try to fish for information?
It's not. It's none of that. It's the fact that I think first of all, I think he's the greatest baseball player I've ever seen, and you can parse that any way you want. But he's a cheater. I didn't say he wasn't a cheater. He's the greatest baseball player I've ever seen, and so I think there's hard-hitting questions to ask him, no doubt. I mean, it wouldn't be this. You're the best. I love you. I don't think I love him, but I think he's fascinating. I think he is a freaking fascinating guy to get in the head of. Did he start using steroids because he looked at Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa and said, they're not the gum on the bottom of my shoe? It's just, there's so much. The key is he'd have to be honest. And I don't know if he's ready in life to be there yet because he hasn't. He just hasn't. He has never come clean 100%. And I think it'd be fascinating to hear from him.
I agree with you, and let me know if you get him on because I'll be tuned in for sure. Favorite WWE wrestler current?
Current?
Current. I want to hear
God. Currently, I'd say Daniel Bryan. Still like
Daniel Bryan. Favorite WWE wrestler ever?
Kurt Angle. But here's the key. Okay, here's the thing about Kurt Angle. When he came back, it was a disaster. Couldn't wrestle, couldn't talk. So I'm saying prime Kurt Angle. Okay, don't think of Willie Mays falling down in the outfield and center field. Don't think of a washed-up guy. Prime Kurt Angle, pound for pound, greatest wrestler of all time. Awesome on the mic as well.
He is. He dumped the milk over his face, right? That was one of his key.
Sexy Kurt. You remember Sexy Kurt?
Favorite president. I know this is a top. You mentioned a couple times on air, but for anyone that didn't hear it, you have a favorite president?
It ain't cliched when it's true, and that's Abraham Lincoln. Not even close.
And we do have a history teacher on the call that he's shy now, so he won't get on, but he has mentioned that he wanted to have some historic debates with you, but we'll save that for a later day. Favorite caller? It doesn't have to be current on your current show. Any show that you had, who's a caller that at least sticks out?
Guy by the name of Frank in Massapequa, who I haven't heard from in a while, so I hope he's okay. But he wanted to just yell and argue about everything. Doesn't matter what. He wanted to rip the Mets. That was always something he wanted to do. But I always liked it because he would argue a lot, but, I think it brings out the best in you sometimes. So he'd probably be my number one.
All right. And last one of the rapid-fire questions, the old question, you have a dinner table, you're allowed to invite 3 guests. Could be anyone. Who you invited?
From history.
From history, anyone, yep.
Hold on, finger. Abe Lincoln, Jackie Robinson. And the third guy would probably be George Washington. Washington, Lincoln, and Jackie.
So you want to know a lot about the history of the country going off of
and
that.
Three distinct time periods too. I mean, think about that. Three guys that wouldn't have, hung out, obviously.
Okay, so now we have a couple questions from the viewers that I'm going to read off to you. Now we're going to flip over this first question. It's an NBA question. Giannis, where do you think he signs? Brooklyn. Let's be realistic.
No. I believe Giannis stays in Milwaukee. I've seen zero indication on him ever having an interest in leaving. They're a championship caliber team. I don't buy him leaving. Why would he? Would be my question. Why?
Yeah. Next question. Mike Trout, obviously he's on the 12-year contract with the Angels. Does he ever make the playoffs? Do the Angels ever do enough to make – I think he's in the playoffs once.
This year.
You think,
he's going to make the playoffs.
This could be the year.
I mean, half the freaking sport is going to make the playoffs. No, Mike Trout will make the playoffs, and he'll eventually have some success. He's got many years left in his career. The Angels are a big market team. I don't know if he'll win a championship. I'm not saying that, but I definitely think he'll get another crack at the postseason, no doubt.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, Moreno spends money, so I mean, They haven't spent it wisely over the years on C.J. Wilson and names like that. But I think eventually they're gonna. I mean, they signed Rendon. They're gonna get some right.
Look, and also, they're putting everybody in the playoffs. And that's another thing that may not go back to normal. I don't necessarily think that 2 years from now we're going to be back to the 5 playoff teams. So more teams in the playoffs, just more of a chance that they make it.
Yeah. Favorite position to play on a baseball diamond? You play Twitter baseball still. What is your favorite position on a baseball?
First base.
First base?
Not even close.
Yeah.
Love first base.
Close enough like the on the mound.
And you'd have to admit, I mean, look, pitching is fun, but here's the thing about it. I'm not a good pitcher. I do believe, and you have to admit this, Ryan, that while I couldn't hit a lick, I could pick it at first base. I was okay. I'm not saying I was great, but I was competent. I was a competent first baseman.
I can vouch for that you couldn't hit. I could definitely vouch for that. But I could vouch for, out of, I think it was you and 2 other first basemen we had on our team, for a shortstop, a middle infielder, I was the most comfortable throwing to you than anyone else.
Damn right.
But the tough part was you did a great book. So it was tough to get you out there when you did a great book. And that kind of brings me to my next question. What's behind scoring every game? People that don't know, you pretty much score every game you go to, and then every game, well, I don't know if you still do. I know in the past you did. At home, when the Mets were on the road, you scored the games at home as well.
Oh, my God. I mean, so the story of it is I'd say when I was 8 or 9, my dad taught me how to score. He would take me to Met games, and he would buy me the scorecard. I would score the game. I started doing it so much, my dad said to me, son, I can't buy you a scorecard every game. It's $5. I'll buy you one from Odell's. So I bought it from Odell's, and I was like, man, I should score this World Series game tonight. And then he got me the Bob Carpenter book, which I still have to this day. And I think what started as something fun to do going to games and something fun to do as a diehard Met fan just became I can't stop. And I haven't. And to the point now where it helps me. It used to be an obsession and just a weird habit. And now with 1,000% certainty, I can say it helps me. I mean, when a caller calls up and asks about a move in the 7th inning, I'm just going to – first of all, I probably remember it, but more than that, I've got a scorebook in front of me. I mean, what's better than that? So I think it's helped. It certainly has helped during the last 2 months. Like anytime we've talked about an old game, when the show's over, I usually go back, or even beforehand, if I know we're talking about a game, I can look at a game I scored and just – it brings you back to it in an incredible way. When you see that scorecard, it really brings your memory back to everything. So if anything has happened during this 2.5-month quarantine, it's reminded me how cool scoring games are and how it actually can help you. But I think it was just an obsession that I haven't been able to cut. But, dude, and they're close to me right now. They're around here. I've got 20 books filled with games from since 1992, I think is when I started. So whatever that is, 28 years.
Do you ever, you mentioned earlier, you watched like the 1992 random Mets game. Do you go back with the book and see if you had it right as a kid scoring it?
I've done that a little bit, but not that much, because
Okay.
most of the games I'm watching, I didn't score. But there was a game I rewatched recently. It was the Game 5 of the '96 World Series, Yankees-Braves, the 1-0 game. I scored it. I mean, I was 13 years old. It was Yankees-Braves World Series. And so as I was rewatching it, I did bring the scorebook out to say, this is cool. So I was kind of looking along as the game was going on.
That's pretty cool and a good reference. And the last question I have, and I don't know if anyone last chance to put anything in the chat that I could ask Evan. Last question I have, or I got two, I should say. First, and I know the answer to this, biggest influence in your professional career of radio. Who's you're the biggest fan of?
In radio?
Radio.
Come on, that is Howard Stern. I think he's the greatest host ever. I think he's the greatest interviewer ever. And even though it's certainly not sports, anyone who listens to Howard knows he doesn't know anything about sports, care about sports, like sports, anything about sports. He's just he's a brilliant, brilliant host. And so he's just the best. And everyone who's in this business should recognize that, because he is.
Do you notice any of his tendencies or characteristics that you notice in yourself now that you took for him?
Yeah, probably more the interview style, because I think he's the greatest interviewer of all time. I'm not, right? But I always try to grow and get better. So I listen to him thinking, how does he do it? How does he get so much information out of people? So I don't necessarily think it's a phrase or a word. It's more trying to emulate a style, because he's the best. And look, I don't know if I'll ever get the 60% of him, but hey, you always want to learn from the best, you know? For anyone who plays baseball, what do? You watch the best. You try to learn from them. He's clearly the best.
Yeah, and I think you hit it right on the head that he interviews guys from people from all different walks of life. And he obviously is not an expertise in whatever their profession is or whatever, but somehow he gets them to open up. And, you know, I think all of us here in El Covo, we can listen to him and an hour and a half, 2 hours go by and you're glued in. You know, he doesn't feel like you're listening for that long.
Yeah.
And the last one I have, which I think is a good one, I got two. Sonny's wants me to ask one, so I'll get to the one I have, and then I'll let Sonny ask his, or I'll say Sonny's. I'll ask Sonny's first because it kind of goes with Stern. Beetlejuice or High Pitch Eric? High Pitch Eric. Okay.
I think, I'll say something controversial.
Yeah.
Beetlejuice completely overrated.
Wow. That's a bold statement.
I'm sorry, he just kind of is. Like he's funny, don't get me wrong, but people talk about him as he's the funniest whack packer ever. I mean, most of the time you have no idea what the hell's going on.
Yeah. So the last one for me, and I have a couple more in the chat. Give everyone peek behind the curtain right now at WFAN. In your show, do you guys? I know you said Joe has a great memory. Is most of your show done off of the top of your head memory? Or how much research you have to do, or prep work, I should say, every morning before your show? Because obviously you don't know what people are going to call and asking. So you kind of got to be well-rounded. How do you prepare yourself? Is the best way to go about that?
Well, I mean, if I answered that question 3 months ago, it would simply be watch everything. That watch everything and read everything. And that's how you prepare. I mean, if you watch the games and you know and we've watched the games our whole life. So that's what helps the frame of reference. Someone could bring up something from 1997. We watched it, so we remember it. So I think it's just watch everything, read everything. So don't let anything get past you. The last 2 months have obviously been different. You know, I mean, sometimes there's an obvious thing to open with or talk about because it's about return to play. But a lot of the things Joe and I have talked about have just been historical stuff, or things that we watch, or things that we see, or things that just pop into our brain. But in general, it's watch everything, read everything, and then you're prepared. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go into the chat for the last few, and we'll wrap this up. Who has influenced you the most at WFAN?
Well, probably Joe, because I work with him all the time. But you mean like someone who I've listened to and tried to learn from?
Yep.
Mike and Chris. Mike and the Mad Dog. I was there for about a year before Dog left, but they are the dream team show. They're the best team show you could ever be. So I think in doing a show with a partner, and doing it with Joe for the last 13 years. And who knows? I mean, Joe always talks about retiring. So I may have to work with somebody else someday. That may happen. I think that kind of like what I said about Howard, you look at the best and you learn from the best. And Mike and Chris were the best. They're I think the gold standard of a two-man talk show. They basically created the format in a lot of ways. So I think when it comes to influence at the radio station, it's them, because also I think FAN has a certain sound to it, and they helped really create it. And so it's not that you emulate them. Like, yeah, I'm not like Mike. I'm not like Dog. I'm sure there are parts of us that are like each other. Dog loves presidents too. So I guess in that aspect we're similar, but it's more kind of listening to how they do a radio show, because they do a hell of a radio show.
Yeah, I mean they were the top of the business, right? So they were there for a reason.
No question.
All right, so now I'm going to go through. We're getting rapid fire. Favorite baseball movie?
Field of Dreams.
Okay.
Cliche but true. Greatest baseball movie of all time. I mean, who the hell doesn't cry at the end? It's having a catch with his dad. Damn it.
Do you have a preference of, if Joe does retire, who you work with, and someone put out there, would it be possible for JJ, or if JJ leaves midday? They obviously liked you and JJ together. So
what are you asking me? Is that my
preference? Do you think JJ, or could you see you and JJ doing a show, or do you have a personal preference that maybe you might not want to say?
I love JJ. The appealing thing about JJ is that we literally root for every team the opposite. So, which is kind of different than what me and Joe have done.
You and Joe are the same.
Well, two are the same. I mean, in hockey and basketball, we don't, but certainly baseball and football. With him, we literally have nothing in common as far as sports fandom. So, yeah, I love JJ. My hope is Joe never retires, but I'm also aware that probably is an unrealistic goal.
Yeah. This is a good one. This is a good question. Do you find that watching games are tough when your teams are terrible, but you still have to because it's your job?
I'll tell you why the answer is no to that. When I didn't do this job, I still watched. You know what I mean? Like when I wasn't on WFAN and I didn't literally have to watch every Met game, I watched every Met game. Is it difficult with, let's say, the Knicks? It's tough. It's weird because I take a lot of pride in watching every Knicks game, even when they suck, because I'm not a Knicks fan. Everybody knows that. And I don't even like the Knicks. But I also want people to think that and know that if they want to talk about the Knicks and they're frustrated that their team is 17-35, that they could call up and at least they have somebody that watched. They can talk to somebody that watched it. So they're not like, yeah, I'm ticked off about Julius Randle. He's got the basketball IQ of nothing, and they want to bitch about it. I want to be there with them. What makes it easier is I despise the Knicks so much that even when they suck and they're unwatchable, I love it. It's fantastic to watch them crash and burn.
Yeah. And if anybody listens to your podcast, which now would be a good time to plug it, Evan and Robert's podcast, and we'll subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. They would have saw an instant reaction of you gloating when the Knicks didn't win the lottery. So anyone knows your hatred for the Knicks.
Was it gloating necessarily? I was relieved. Because I didn't want Knicks. Basically, what it came down to is if the Knicks won the lottery, all I would have heard about for the next 6 months is how Zion Williamson is the greatest thing ever. The Knicks are back. We got the city. Blank everybody. And so I just needed to not deal with that for a few months.
I got 3 more for you. Do your producers ever make you ask the tough questions to your guests and you're uncomfortable asking them, or even hesitant to ask them, and you do your own, or is there like a script you follow for interviews?
I've never been uncomfortable to ask a tough question because what the hell's the worst that can happen? You know what I mean? Like, what are they going to hang up? Okay. I mean, so it's
we had
really
the one reporter hang up on Joe, right? Didn't you guys have a reporter, what was it, from California? The one voter, was that you guys in the Hall of Fame?
No, that was...
Oh, that was Smooth, right? He hung up like 2 seconds into the interview?
Yeah, that was Steve Summers. I think look, we don't write down questions or a producer tell us to ask questions. We want to, my goal is we ask the questions what I think I want to know, but what everyone else wants to know. And if I didn't ask a question that people wanted to know, I didn't do my job. I'm certainly not perfect. There are times in which an interview's over. I'm like, damn it, how did I not ask that? So it does happen, but no, I mean, I'm trying to think if I've ever been like really the one time early on I was doing middays. We were at the Super Bowl and Sean Merriman was there. Remember Sean Merriman, the football player? And he had been busted for PEDs a year earlier. And so I was like, man, I got to ask him about that. And so I'm sitting next to him, and he's this big muscular guy. And this was the moment where I said, boy, I do have something to lose. What if I asked a question he was offended by? He could kick my ass. I mean, great, I'll get a lot of money afterwards because I can sue him, but I don't want to get my ass kicked by Sean Merriman. And I asked it, and he was all right. He wasn't in love with it, but he wasn't angry. So I think that kind of gave me the confidence. Yeah, just ask what you think is on your mind. And hopefully I do that most of the time. You certainly don't want to miss out on asking a question because you may not get the opportunity to interview that person ever again.
And a little spin-off from this, your guests, are they prepped for any of these questions? Or is it, hey, I'm asking you first, they got to fire off the cuff a little bit?
Very rarely have we been given parameters. And if there's too many parameters, we're not going to put the person on, or if it's too much. So very rarely has anyone ever come on and said, don't talk about this. Usually they agree to come on and they know that we may ask anything.
All right, final two here. Favorite baseball game of all time? If you could pick any game to watch, you had to watch it. You're on an island. You had to watch it over and over again. What's your favorite game?
I'd probably say Game 5 Mets-Dodgers, the Jake game. Now that we can not be stressed about it, that game was freaking awesome. Just everything about it. The fact that he showed as much guts as he did getting through the 6 innings, the way Familia dominated the last 6 outs, low scoring, winner take all, the exhilaration at the end. I tell you, it's very difficult as a Met fan because I'm biased. I'm going to pick a game of one of my teams. That was as good as it gets.
Yeah, I agree with that. I still remember I was watching that game. I think I was with Sonny in Pennsylvania at a baseball tournament. We got in from a game, and I think it was like the third or fourth inning. We got back to the hotel, and we were sitting in the hotel lobby, and I think he was struggling. His pitch count was high, and all of a sudden, 5th or 6th inning, he locked it down. So that's definitely a good one. If you could place yourself in any past championship event, whether you were alive as a fan, so you go any championship game to be there in person as a fan, what game would it be?
Game 6 and 7 of the '86 World Series. I mean, to hear what my dad says about it, what Joe says about it. I was 3. It doesn't count. You're 3 years old. You have no idea. First of all, to see your team win a championship, but then in the manner that they did, both games, if I could pick 2. I mean, because Game 6 isn't a clincher, obviously. And Game 7 was a great comeback, too. They were down by 3 runs. But those 2 games would have been – that would be the 2 I'd pick.
Yeah, and the last one before we wrap this up, and this might be a tough one for you. You have your 4 major sports teams. If you could pick one and only one to win a championship for the rest of your life, which one are you picking?
It's not a difficult question. It's not, because there's a first love. And that first love is what you're always going to pick. So it's clearly the Mets. The Mets. You could
live knowing that the Nets, Jets, I won't put the Islanders into it, but the Nets and Jets will never win. You'll be Joe for the next 40 years.
Look, it's I'm not saying I'd be thrilled with it, but I'm also at a point where I'm 36 years old. God knows how much, time you have on the planet. I just want one at this point. Like, give me one. So you're giving me a championship. If I'm taking a championship, that's amazing. Would I love to see all my teams win? Of course. I mean, right now, the Nets signed Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. My expectations are through the roof. Like, they better freaking win. But, the Mets are my first love. There's no doubt that the Jets and you're right, the Islanders are distant fourth. I always say hockey and basketball is tough to love both of those sports on an equal level. I get into it, but the Nets I watch every game. The Islanders I watch, but not with the same passion. There's no question. So I'd love to see all of them win, but no, it'd be the Mets. The Mets are the first love.
I mean, I agree with that. If I had to pick one, it would be the Mets. If you guys listening, you can catch Evan afternoons now on WFAN. Go ahead, subscribe anywhere you can get a podcast. That's the Evan Roberts podcast. He's more than just sports. He does reviews on his TV shows he's watching. You're a big wrestling fan, ton of wrestling content on there. So definitely go check that out. And if you come across any Mets ones, you might hear myself and Phil. And if you had to pick one to continue on the Mets podcast, it would probably be me, right? We could get rid of Phil. I know he's
Yeah, no question about it. Phil's
right.
easy to get rid of. Adam Eaton, as you're affectionately known, would clearly move on.
Yep. Before you go, I mean, we touched about it earlier. Any advice you give to the kids on here that are entering their high school ages and about to start their adulthood soon, just about life and journey through the works?
Failure is going to come, and you just can't be beaten up by it. You can't give up. If you fail once and you give up, then you're never giving yourself a chance to succeed. Failure is a big, big part of life. It's part of why I think I do love baseball the most, that you can fail 72% of the time and you're still a 280 hitter. And it's a great example of what life is, whether it's like literally it works in everything, whether it's dating, whether it's job interviews, whatever it is, be prepared to fail and just bounce back. That's all you got to do, and you'll be successful.
I think those are golden words, and I hope everyone really listens to that and takes that, and because that's good advice for sure. So Evan, thank you for spending your time. I know you just got off the air a little while ago. Go see your wife and kid. I don't know if Jet's still up. Hope they're doing well. Stay safe, and thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Stay safe, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Hey, buddy.